Frank Morrison's knees hit the gravel hard enough to draw blood through his worn Wranglers, but he didn't notice. His entire focus locked onto the scene before him, a sight that made his 72-year-old heart slam against his ribs like it was trying to escape. The female cougar lay twisted against the railway tracks, her right front leg disappearing into the narrow gap between two rail sections. The steel fish plate that joined the rails had somehow become a trap. The metal edges cutting deep into flesh and fur, dark blood, long dried to the color of rust, streaked down the weathered wood of the railroad tie. But that wasn't what made Frank's hand shake. It was her eyes, golden, alert, and locked directly on his face. Not with the wild panic he'd expect from a trapped predator, but with something that looked disturbingly like calculation. The cub, maybe 3 months old, no bigger than a border collie, pressed against its mother's side, making soft, chirping sounds Frank had never heard from a cougar before. The little one's ribs showed through patchy fur, and its oversized paws trembled with each step. "Jesus Christ!" Frank whispered. Then louder, "Jesus Christ!" The mathematics of disaster calculated themselves in his head without conscious thought. The position of the sun, roughly 2:47 p.m. by his practiced railway eye. The BNSF coal train from Dodge City scheduled through at 3:30, give or take 10 minutes. The weight of an adult female cougar, 90 pounds at least. The distance to his truck, 200 yards. His cell phone 1 bar, maybe none. The mother cougar's lips pulled back, revealing canines the length of Frank's thumb. But she didn't snarl. The gesture seemed almost resigned. Frank's hands moved to his belt, finding the canister of bear spray he'd carried ever since Margaret's encounter back in '87. 34 years of carrying it. Never once used. His fingers fumbled with the safety tab, arthritis making them clumsy as sausages. Then the cougar did something that changed everything. She stopped looking at him. Instead, her head turned painfully, muscles straining against the trap to nudge her cub. A gentle push with her nose, directing the little one toward Frank. The message couldn't have been clearer if she'd spoken English. "Take him." "No," Frank said aloud, backing up a step. "No, no, no, that's not. You don't just—" The distant vibration through the rail was so faint that someone who hadn't spent 40 years maintaining tracks might have missed it. But Frank felt it through the soles of his boots, that subtle tremor that meant iron wheels on iron rails. Still miles away, but coming. The mother cougar felt it too. Her trapped paws scraped desperately against the metal, claws fully extended, carving grooves in the rust. Fresh blood welled up, bright crimson against the old brown stains. Frank's radio crackled in the truck, too far to help now. His phone showed at 0 bars when he checked again. The isolation that he'd chosen, that he'd treasured since Margaret died, suddenly felt like a coffin. "All right," he heard himself say. "All right, girl. Let's see what we're dealing with." He dropped to his knees again, this time intentionally, keeping his movements slow and telegraphed. The gravel bit through his jeans, and his lower back screamed its usual protest. The mother cougar watched him approach, her free paw flexing, claws sliding in and out of their sheaths. 6 feet away, Frank stopped. This close. He could see the damage clearly. The leg wasn't just trapped, it was crushed. The bone showed white through torn muscle. Even if he could free her, that leg was gone. In the wild, a 3-legged predator was a dead predator. "How long you been here?" he asked, his voice rough. The dryness of the blood, the weakness in her movements. 12 hours at least, maybe more. "Since last night's freight." The cub chirped again, that strange bird-like sound. It took a tentative step toward Frank, then looked back at its mother. She made a low rumbling sound, Not quite a purr, not quite a growl. Frank's mind raced through options. None of them good. He could try to pry the rails apart, but he'd need tools he didn't have. He could try to flag down the train, but coal trains took over a mile to stop. It would be on them before the engineer even saw his signal. He could. The crack of a rifle shot split the air. Frank spun around so fast his vision grayed at the edges. Tom Bradley stood 20 yards away. His Remington 700 aimed directly at the trapped cougar. The rancher's weathered face was set in hard lines, jaw clenched tight enough to crack teeth. "Step away from that killer." "Frank," Tom said, his voice carrying the authority of a man who'd made up his mind. "Step away right now, or I swear to God I'll shoot through you to get to her." The mother cougar's reaction was instant and primal. Despite her trapped leg, she twisted her body to shield her cub, a snarl finally ripping from her throat. The sound raised every hair on Frank's arms, activated instincts older than thought. "Tom," Frank said, not moving. "Tom, wait! That bitch killed 2 of my calves this week, tore their throats out, not 300 yards from where my grandson plays. Look at her leg, Tom, look at it." Frank's voice cracked with urgency. "She's been trapped since last night at least. She couldn't have killed anything." Tom's rifle didn't waver. Then her mate did it. Or another from her pack. "Cougars don't have packs." "I don't give a damn about the biology lesson." Tom's shout echoed off the low hills. "That's a predator with a taste for beef, 50 miles from where it belongs, and the only good predator is a dead one. You know that as well as I do." Frank's mouth went dry as dust. He knew Tom's history. Everyone in 3 counties did. 5 years ago, his grandson Jake had been attacked by a cougar while camping with the Boy Scouts. The boy survived, but the scars across his neck and shoulder would never fade. Tom had hunted that particular cat for 3 months before Fish and Game beat him to it. "This is different," Frank said. "Why? Because you're lonely. Because you miss Margaret and think saving some wildcat is going to fill that hole." Tom's words hit like physical blows. "She's gone, Frank. Your wife is gone. And playing Snow White with the forest creatures ain't bringing her back." The cruelty of it, the calculated emotional violence, told Frank that Tom was beyond reasoning. The rancher's finger moved from the trigger guard to the trigger itself. Time slowed to molasses. The mother cougar, as if sensing the shift, made a sound Frank had never heard from any animal, a keening wail that was part defiance, part goodbye. She pressed her nose to her cub one last time, then turned to face Tom's rifle. Her golden eyes found Frank's. He saw it there, not submission, but a question, a mother's desperate calculation. "If I die, will you?" Frank Morrison had made many choices in his 72 years. He'd chosen the railway over college, chosen Margaret over his parents' objections, chosen to stay in Kansas when David begged him to move to New York. But no choice had ever felt as heavy as the one balanced on this moment. The railway tracks began to sing, that high, metallic note that meant the train was maybe 5 minutes out. Tom's finger tightened on the trigger. The cub chirped, lost and afraid. And Frank Morrison, arthritic knees and all, did the only thing that made sense in a world that had stopped making sense 3 years ago when Margaret took her last breath. He stood up and stepped directly between Tom Bradley's rifle and the trapped cougar. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. The rifle barrel tracked Frank's movement, a black eye that never blinked. Tom's knuckles went white around the wooden stock. "Move, Frank!" "No." Frank's knees locked to stop the trembling. Behind him, the mother cougar's breathing came in short, wet gasps. The metallic stink of blood mixed with the tar and creosote smell of sun-baked railroad ties. You're gonna get yourself killed over an animal that'd eat to you soon as look at you. Tom's cheek pressed against the rifle stock, sighting down the scope, even though Frank stood close enough to hit with a rock. Then that's my choice to make. Like hell it is. Tom shifted his stance, boots crunching on ballast rock. You think Margaret would want this you protecting the thing that what marked her? Frank's left hand went involuntarily to his ribs, where Margaret's scars had been. 3 parallel lines from shoulder blade to hip, healed but never forgotten. That was 37 years ago. Tom, different cat, different state. Margaret forgave. Tom spat tobacco juice into the dirt. That why she never went hiking again? Why she jumped every time the barn cats came around? The tracks hummed louder. Frank's railroad brain calculated 3 miles out now, maybe less. The coal trains ran heavy, sometimes 120 cars. Once that weight got moving, the cub made that chirping sound again. Frank risked a glance back. The little cougar had climbed onto its mother's haunches, front paws kneading her fur the way house cats did. The mother's trapped leg had swollen to twice its normal size, purple-black under the tawny fur. Tom, look at her leg. Really look at it. I don't need to. It's been trapped at least 12 hours, maybe 18. And Frank kept his voice steady, factual. Your calves were killed Thursday night, son. Today's Saturday afternoon. She physically couldn't have done it. Tom's rifle lowered an inch. Her mate, then. Males don't stay with females after mating, and she wouldn't have a cub this young if she had a mate now. Biology doesn't lie. Tom, the rancher's jaw worked like he was chewing iron filings. The rifle lowered another inch. Then Frank's phone buzzed. 1 bar of signal, flickering in and out. The screen showed a text from an unknown number. Mr. Morrison, emergency at mile marker. Jake hurt. Come now. Tom's grandson. Mile marker for it was 8 miles east. The old trestle bridge over Sawyer Creek. Frank held up the phone. Tom's face went the color of old bone. Tom's rifle hit the ground. The sound of metal on gravel snapped through the air like breaking bones. Give me your keys, Tom said, already moving toward Frank's F-150. Wait. Frank grabbed Tom's arm. The muscles under the rancher's shirt felt like steel cable. That text? Did Jake have your number? Tom yanked free. What? The text came to me, not you? Jake doesn't have my number. Frank's throat constricted around the words. And mile marker 47 hasn't existed since they renumbered the highway in '09. Tom froze. His hand went to his own phone, fingers stabbing at the screen. No signal. He tried again. Nothing. The rails sang louder now, that high metallic whine that meant 2 miles, maybe less. Frank could feel it through his boot soles, the way a tuning fork feels when it's close to the right pitch. Someone's fucking with us, Tom said. But his voice carried uncertainty now. Who would? The mother cougar made a sound, not a snarl, not a growl, a wheeze that brought pink foam to her lips. Her free paw scraped against the railroad tie, claws leaving deep grooves in the creosote-soaked wood. Doesn't matter who, Frank said. Train's coming either way. Tom looked at the cougar, at his rifle in the dirt, at the horizon where a black smudge of diesel smoke was just becoming visible. His hands opened and closed like he was trying to grab hold of something that wasn't there. My truck, Tom said suddenly. The winch. Angle's wrong. You'll tear her leg clean off. Then what? Tom's voice cracked. We just watch her get... The cub chirped, not the scared sound from before. This was different, urgent, almost like a bark. The little cougar had climbed down from its mother and was pawing at something half buried in the gravel beside the tracks. Frank dropped to his knees. His fingers found metal under the stones, an old rail anchor, the kind they used before modern clips, rusted but solid. The heavy, C-shaped iron used to hold rails to ties before they switched to better systems. "This might work," Frank said, testing the weight. "Might could pry the fish plate apart enough. Might could." Tom was already kneeling beside him. "That's your plan. You got a better one?" Tom's hands joined Frank's on the rail anchor. Rust flakes and dirt ground into their palms. They worked the pointed end into the gap where the cougar's leg disappeared. Metal scraped against metal with a sound like fingernails on glass. The mother cougar's body went rigid. Her trapped paw flexed, claws extending fully. Fresh blood welled up around the trap, but she didn't pull away. "On 3, Frank said. 1. The rail anchor slipped. Tom's knuckles smashed into the rail, skin peeling back to show white underneath. He didn't make a sound, just reset his grip. The train's horn blasted, long, long, short, long, the signal for a crossing. Except there was no crossing here. The engineer had seen them. Frank's arms shook as he repositioned the anchor. Parkinson's picking the worst possible time to remind him of its presence. He bit down on his tongue hard enough to taste copper, using the pain to focus. "Again," he said. They pulled. The fish plate groaned, but didn't budge. The gap might have widened a millimeter, maybe. "It's not enough." Tom's face had gone red with strain. Veins stood out on his neck like rope. The ground vibrated now, that deep, bone-deep rumble of massive weight in motion. Frank could see the train clearly, 3 locomotives pulling a line of coal cars that disappeared around the bend, a mile out, maybe less. "Tom, we gotta go." "No." Tom shifted position, bracing his boot against the rail. "I'm not leaving her to—" "You'll die for nothing. Then I die." Tom's eyes met Frank's. 5 years I've been hating these cats. 5 years of wanting them all dead. And now. He looked at the cub, which had pressed itself against its mother's side. "Can't do it. Can't be the man who lets this happen." Frank understood. The weight of choices made and unmade. The terrible arithmetic of guilt. "Your truck," Frank said. "The toolbox. You still carry that come-along?" Tom's eyes widened. "The hand winch? Yeah, but get it, now." Tom ran. His boots kicked up dust that hung in the afternoon air like smoke. Frank stayed with the cougars, one hand on the rail anchor, the other flat against the ground, feeling the approach of 200,000 tons of coal and steel. The mother cougar's eyes found his. The gold had gone pale, shock setting in. Her breathing came in short, sharp pants. The cub licked her face, making those chirping sounds that Frank now recognized as pure distress. Tom's boot falls pounded back across the gravel. The come-along, a manual ratchet winch, hit the ground beside Frank. 3-ton capacity, the label said. Cable and hooks on both ends. Hooked to the fish plate, Frank said, already moving. Other end to the cattle guard. Tom pointed to the concrete and steel barrier 20 feet down the track, designed to keep livestock from walking the rails. "It'll hold." They worked without speaking. Tom's fingers bloodied from his smashed knuckles. Fumbled with the hooks, Frank cranked the ratchet, feeling the cable go taut. The fish plate groaned. The train horn blasted again. Continuous now. The emergency signal. Frank cranked harder. His shoulder muscles burned. Sweat ran into his eyes, blurring his vision. The fish plate actually bent, but the gap widened only another half-inch. "Not enough," Tom said. "It's not." The mother cougar suddenly twisted her whole body. Throwing her weight against the trapped leg, Frank heard the bone snap a wet, splintering crack like a green branch breaking. She screamed, a sound that went through Frank like a blade. But the leg pulled free. She collapsed instantly, the mangled limb dragging uselessly. The cub ran to her, butting its head against her shoulder. Tom grabbed the cub. Frank grabbed the mother, 90 pounds of muscle and bone and desperation, and they ran. They made it 15 feet before Frank's knees buckled. The cougar's weight drove him into the gravel. Tom grabbed her scruff, hauling her and Frank together. They tumbled down the embankment as the first locomotive thundered past, air horn screaming, brakes throwing sparks. The ground shook. Coal dust and diesel exhaust filled the air. Frank's ears rang from the noise, the pressure, the proximity of death. When the last car passed, they lay in the drainage ditch like battlefield casualties. The mother cougar between them, her breathing shallow and rapid. The cub pressed against her belly, mewing. Tom's phone buzzed. Full signal now. A text from Sarah, Jake's mother. "Where are you? Jake's been here at the house all afternoon." Frank's blood went cold. If Jake had been home all along, who sent the first message, and why? The mother cougar's eyes rolled back, showing white. Her breathing stopped. Frank's hands moved without thought. 2 fingers pressed against the cougar's throat, searching for the carotid pulse under blood-matted fur. Nothing. Her ribcage had gone still, that terrible stillness that meant the difference between sleep and death. "Move!" Tom shoved Frank aside, his bloodied hands already positioning themselves over the cougar's chest. Counted compressions on calves before. Can't be that different. The rancher's palms pressed down, released, pressed again. The cougar's body compressed under the force, ribs flexing. Tom's lips moved, counting silently. 15 compressions, 20. Sweat ran down his jaw, mixing with coal dust to leave black streaks. The cub circled them, chirping in short, panicked bursts. Its paws left tiny prints in the mud where drainage water pooled. "Come on." Tom's words came out between compressions. "Come on, you stubborn bitch." And Frank grabbed the cub before it could climb onto its mother. The little cougar twisted in his grip, surprisingly strong. Claws raked across Frank's forearm, drawing parallel lines of fire. He didn't let go. 30 compressions. Tom's arms shook. The mangled leg, the one they'd freed, had bent at an impossible angle. White bone jutting through torn muscle. Blood seeped into the dirt. Too much blood. "Tom, shut up!" Tom leaned down, pinched the cougar's nostrils closed, and sealed his mouth over hers. Her fangs pressed against his lips. He exhaled hard, her chest rising. Again, her chest rose. Back to compressions. Tom's shirt had gone dark with sweat. His smashed knuckles left red smears on the cougar's fur with each push. Frank's phone buzzed. Another text. Same unknown number. "You passed the first test." The words made no sense. Frank's thumb moved to delete it when the screen flickered. A photo appeared, aerial view of them in the ditch, taken moments ago. The angle was impossible. No helicopter, no drone buzz, nothing overhead but empty sky. Tom's compressions faltered. How long? How long before brain damage? 4 minutes without oxygen? Maybe 6. Frank had learned that when Margaret coded in the hospital. 3 times they'd brought her back. The 4th time, they couldn't. Tom checked his watch. It's been 3. The mother cougar's tongue lolled from her mouth, purple-gray instead of healthy pink. Her pupils had dilated until only a thin ring of gold remained. "Let me take over," Frank said. "No." Tom's rhythm never stopped. "My fault. My hate brought this. The cougar's body convulsed. Tom jerked back. The cat's spine arched, muscles seizing. Her good leg kicked out, claws fully extended, catching Tom's thigh. 3 red lines appeared through torn denim. Then she gasped. A wet, rattling pull of air that sounded like death reversing itself. Another breath, another. The cub tore free from Frank's grip and ran to its mother, pressing against her neck. She tried to lift her head, couldn't, and settled for a weak rumble that might have been a purr. Jesus! Tom sat back on his heels, chest heaving. Jesus Christ! She's... Sarah's pickup crested the embankment. Tires spraying gravel. Tom's daughter-in-law jumped out before the truck fully stopped, medical bag in hand. Not veterinary, the human kind, from her work at the county hospital. Behind her, Jake climbed out. 14 years old, tall for his age. The scars on his neck visible even from 20 yards away. 3 parallel lines from jaw to collarbone where a cougar's claws had nearly ended him 5 years ago. Tom struggled to his feet. "Jake, get back in the truck." "No." The boy's voice had the crack of adolescence, but the tone of decision. "I heard on the scanner. I know what you're doing." Jake walked closer. The mother cougar's eyes tracked him, her lips pulling back slightly. A warning, even in her weakness. Jake stopped, but didn't retreat. "That's not the one that hurt me," he said. "You know that, right, Grandpa?" "That one died. Officer Cruz shot it." "Jake, I'm not scared." Jake's hand went to his scars, fingers tracing the raised tissue. "Not anymore." Sarah had already started an IV line, the bag of saline hanging from Tom's outstretched arm. She worked with practiced efficiency. Her movement sharp and economical. The tourniquet went on above the mangled leg. The bleeding slowed. "She needs a vet," Sarah said. "Der Mill's in town, or Mills won't treat wildlife." Frank said. "Policy? Insurance?" Then Kansas State. Their teaching hospital. 2 hours. She won't make 2 hours. Tom's voice had gone flat. "Look at that leg." Frank looked. The bone wasn't just broken, it was shattered. Multiple fractures from ankle to knee. The foot had gone black from lack of circulation. "Amputation?" Sarah said. "It's the only way. 3-legged cougar can't hunt. Can't hunt means can't survive." Tom wiped blood from his hands onto his jeans. "We saved her just to watch her die slow." Jake knelt beside the cub, which had curled against its mother's belly. "What if she didn't have to hunt? What? What if she lived somewhere safe, like a sanctuary or something?" Tom's laugh had no humor in it. "Nearest big cat sanctuary is in Colorado. They don't take animals that can't be displayed. 3-legged cougars, no good for education programs." Frank's phone buzzed again. This time, a video file. He almost ignored it, then saw the thumbnail, his own ranch. Filmed from above. He pressed play. The video showed his property, all 200 acres, but with structures that didn't exist, fenced enclosures, a medical building, a sign at the entrance. Morrison Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. Text appeared over the image. Second test. Will you sacrifice for what you saved? Frank. Sarah noticed his expression. "What is it?" He held up the phone. Tom leaned in, squinting at the screen. "That's your place," Tom said. "But those buildings—" Another message appeared. "David Morrison has agreed to fund construction if you agree to manage it. Yes or no, Frank's son?" David, who hadn't spoken to him in 6 months. David, who wanted him to sell to the frackers. David, who lived in New York and had no way of knowing what was happening in a Kansas drainage ditch. "This is impossible," Frank said. The mother cougar's breathing had steadied but remained shallow. Each exhale brought pink foam to her lips. Internal injuries. Probably. Even if the leg could be fixed, there was more wrong inside. Jake's phone chimed, then Shretres, then Tut. They all looked at their screens. The message was the same on each device. "Choose now. The offer expires in 60 seconds. Frank looked at the dying cougar at her cub, at Tom's bloodied hands and Jake's scarred neck. 50 seconds. "It's a scam," Tom said. "Has to be." "What if it's not?" Jake asked. 40 seconds. Sarah checked the cougar's pulse. "She's crashing again." We said, "Whatever we're doing, we need to—" The mother cougar's eyes found Frank's. In them, he saw the same question from before at the tracks. But now he understood it wasn't really a question at all. 30 seconds. Frank typed 3 letters. Yes. His phone screen went black. Then David's face appeared in a video call, his expression unreadable. "Hello, Dad," David said. "We need to talk about what happens next." David's face filled the phone screen, pixels struggling to resolve in the weak signal. Behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows showed Manhattan's skyline, the September afternoon light, cutting sharp angles across glass and steel. "You have 90 seconds before the offer becomes public," David said. "The conservation group I represent needs an answer." Conservation group, Frank's throat felt like sandpaper. "David, you work for Stedman Equity. You buy companies and gut them." "I did." David's jaw tightened, the same tell he'd had since childhood when caught in a lie. "Things change. Mom dying changed things." The mother cougar convulsed. Sarah's hands pressed down on the arterial bleed that had reopened, her latex gloves going red to the wrist. The IV bag swayed from Tom's arm as he shifted position. "She needs surgery now," Sarah said. "Not in an hour, now." Huss David's eyes flicked to something off-screen. "Dr. Sarah Bradley, RN at Mercy Regional. Tom Bradley, rancher. Jake Bradley, freshman at Cimarron Middle School. And one adult female cougar, approximately 4 years old, with compound fractures to the right foreleg." Tom stepped toward the phone. "How the hell do you—" "Because I've been monitoring my father's property for 6 months. David's voice carried no emotion. The wildlife cameras were supposed to document prairie dog populations for the environmental impact statement, the fracking statement. Frank's hand trembled. Parkinson's or rage. He couldn't tell. "You were spying on me. I was trying to protect you from yourself." David looked directly into the camera, a 72-year-old man with stage 2 Parkinson's, living alone on 200 acres. "What happened when you fell last month? Who found you?" "I didn't fall. August 15th, 6:47 p.m. You were checking the east fence line. Your left knee gave out. You lay there for 40 minutes before you could stand." The words hit Frank like cold water. He'd told no one about that fall, had deleted the bruises from his mind the way he deleted David's voicemails. Jake's voice cut through. "The cougar's not breathing right." Sarah had her stethoscope on the cat's chest. "Fluid in the lungs. Probably blood." She looked at Frank. "Whatever your son's offering, take it, or she dies here." David continued. "The Morrison Wildlife Rehabilitation Center isn't a fantasy. Articles of incorporation were filed this morning. Initial funding, $2.3 million. Dr. James Mills has already agreed to serve as veterinary director." "Mills doesn't treat wildlife," Tom said. "He does if the facility has proper licensing and insurance." David's fingers moved off-screen, typing, which it wilted, as of, he checked something. 16 minutes ago. Frank's phone vibrated with incoming documents, legal papers, his name already on them. Architectural plans showing his ranch transformed, bank statements with numbers that couldn't be real. "Why?" Frank asked. "Why now? Why this?" David's controlled expression cracked. "Because Mom would have saved that cougar. You know she would have. Even after what happened to her in '87, she would have saved it." The mother cougar's body seized again. Pink foam bubbled from her mouth. The cub pressed against her, that chirping cry growing desperate. 60 seconds, David said. The helicopter's already in the air from Wichita, 12 minutes out. Mills is scrubbing in at his clinic. But I need a verbal agreement on speaker with Tom Bradley as witness. Helicopter. Tom's voice cracked. Frank, this is insane. Yesterday you were fixing fence posts. Today you're running a wildlife center. Frank looked at the dying cougar. Her eyes had rolled back, showing white crescents. Sarah performed another round of compressions, but her movements had taken on the mechanical quality of someone going through motions they knew were futile. Do it! Jake's words came out fierce. Grandpa, tell him to do it! Tom turned on his grandson. Jake, you don't understand. I understand. She's dying. Jake pointed at his scars. You think I wanted to save her. You think I don't wake up sometimes feeling those claws. His voice broke. But she didn't choose to be here. We put her here. Humans brought cougars back to Kansas. We owe her a chance. 40 seconds, David said. Frank's finger hovered over the agreement button on his phone. $2.3 million. His son, who hadn't called in 6 months, suddenly throwing money at wildlife conservation. None of it made sense. What's the real reason? David's face went still. Mom made me promise something before she died. When the morphine had her talking about everything and nothing. Frank's chest tightened. Those last days. Margaret had said things, wild things, impossible things, plans for the ranch, dreams about sanctuaries. He thought it was the drugs. She made me promise to watch for a sign, David continued. Said I'd know it when I saw it. An old man and a predator and a choice at railroad tracks. The world tilted. Frank grabbed Tom's arm to keep from falling. That's impossible. She couldn't have known. 20 seconds. The mother cougar's breathing stopped. Sarah sat back on her heels, shoulders sagging. The cub climbed onto its mother's still body, chirping and pawing at her face. Now, Dad, yes or no? Frank pressed the button. Yes. The phone screen immediately split into multiple windows. Dr. Mills appeared in scrubs, a helicopter pilot adjusting his headset, a woman in a suit Frank didn't recognize, notarizing something. Agreement witnessed and recorded, the woman said. Mr. Morrison, the aircraft will arrive in 11 minutes. Dr. Mills, are you prepared? Mills nodded. OR's ready. But from what I'm seeing, we're looking at immediate amputation and severe internal injuries. Survival odds are maybe 20%. 20%'s better than 0, David said, then quieter. Dad, there's something else. The security footage from your ranch. 3 nights ago, 2 a.m. I need you to see it when this is over. The helicopter's sound reached them before Frank could respond. That distinctive thrum of rotor blades chopping air. Still distant, but approaching fast. Sarah had resumed CPR on the mother cougar. Tom held the IV bag high, his arms shaking from the effort. Jake cradled the cub, whispering something Frank couldn't hear. There, Tom pointed, a black speck against the afternoon sky, growing larger. The helicopter descended toward the access road, dust spiraling up in brown clouds. Frank had to turn away from the stinging grit. When he looked back, 2 EMTs were running toward them with a stretcher, not EMTs veterinary emergency techs, their jackets labeled K-State Veterinary Emergency Response. We've got her, one said, already assessing. Johnson, get the portable ventilator. This one's circling the drain. They worked with practiced efficiency, transferring the cougar to the stretcher, maintaining Sarah's CPR rhythm without missing a beat. An oxygen mask went over the cougar's muzzle. More IV lines snaked into place. The cub comes too, the tech said, noting Jake's grip on the small cougar. Mom won't recover without it. They ran toward the helicopter, the stretcher bouncing over rough ground. Frank followed, his knees protesting each step. Tom kept pace beside him, still holding the original IV bag high. The helicopter's side door stood open. Inside, equipment Frank recognized from Margaret's final ambulance ride monitors. Drug cabinets, things that kept death at arm's length a little longer. "Who's coming?" the pilot shouted over the rotor noise. Frank started to step forward, but Tom grabbed his shoulder. "Your truck," Tom said. "We'll drive. Meet them there." And he looked at the techs loading the Cougar. "Jake goes with them." "What? No, I'm not letting Jake. He needs to see this through." Tim's eyes met Frank's. "We both do." Jake had already climbed into the helicopter, the cub still in his arms. One of the techs helped him with a safety harness. The boy's face had gone pale, but his jaw was set with determination that looked exactly like Tom's. 2 minutes to liftoff, the pilot called. Frank's phone buzzed. "Another message from David Check. Your truck's glove box when you get there." Sarah appeared at Frank's elbow. "I'll ride with them. Monitor vitals." She was already climbing in. "Tom, Frank drive fast. If she codes again, I don't know if we can bring her back a third time." The helicopter door slammed shut. The rotor pitch changed, building toward takeoff. Frank and Tom stumbled backward from the downdraft. As the aircraft lifted, Frank saw Jake through the window. The boy held the cub against his chest, his scarred neck exposed as he looked down at the small predator in his arms. The image burned itself into Frank's memory. The boy who'd been mauled by a cougar, holding a cougar's baby while machines kept its mother alive. Tom was already running toward Frank's truck. "Keys!" Frank tossed them, his throw weak and off target. Tom snatched them from the air. "Anyway, you know what's in the glove box?" Tom asked as they reached the F-50. "No idea." Tom yanked open the passenger door for Frank, then ran around to the driver's side. The engine turned over on the third try, the old truck protesting like always. "Mills Clinic is 17 minutes if we take Highway 50, Tom said, throwing the truck into gear. 15 if we take the service road past Hendrick's place." "That's technically trespassing. You care." Tom's answer was to floor the accelerator. The truck fishtailed on loose gravel before finding purchase. Frank grabbed the door handle as they bounced over a drainage rut. The glove box fell open on its own. The latch had been broken for years. Inside, among registration papers and spare fuses, lay a manila envelope Frank had never seen before. His name was written on it in Margaret's handwriting. Frank's hands shook as he opened it. Inside was a single photograph and a folded letter. The photograph showed Margaret, taken 3 days before she died. She was sitting in her hospital bed, looking out the window. But the window reflected something, a shape that might have been a large cat, or might have been shadows and pareidolia. Frank unfolded the letter. Margaret's handwriting, shaky from the weakness, but still recognizable. "Frank, if you're reading this..." Then David kept his promise. And the sign. "I know this sounds like morphine talking, but listen, the land has been calling something home. I've felt it for months. You will have a choice to make at the railroad tracks. Choose love over fear. Choose life over..." The letter ended mid-sentence. Tom glanced over. "What is it?" Frank couldn't speak. He held up the photograph. Tom looked, swerved to avoid a pothole, looked again. "Is that... I don't know." They drove in silence for 30 seconds. Then Tom said, "Frank, that helicopter, those techs, they were ready, like they'd been waiting." "Yeah, your son set this up. All of it. Maybe. The text about Jake being hurt, that was him too." Frank thought about it. "I don't think so. David's not that subtle." "Then who?" Before Frank could answer, his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. "Hello." A woman's voice, professional and calm. "Mr. Morrison, This is Director Chen from the Mountain States Wildlife Conservation Partnership. We've been monitoring the situation. The female cougar you rescued is designated F14 in our tracking system. Tracking system? She was part of a reintroduction program. We lost her signal 4 days ago. A pause. Mr. Morrison, F14 is pregnant. Ultrasound confirmed it 3 weeks ago. If she dies, we lose not just her, but potentially 4 cubs. Tom's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. Nobody told us she was pregnant. We've been searching for her. The mortality signal from her collar only activated an hour ago when her heart stopped the first time. Frank did the math. The cougar had been trapped for at least 12 hours. Pregnant, injured, dehydrated, and she'd still fought to keep her first cub safe. "How did you know we'd save her?" Frank asked. Director Chen's answer chilled him to the bone. "We didn't, but someone did. Check your security cameras from 3 nights ago. Mr. Morrison, 2 a.m., like your son said." The line went dead. Tom turned onto Mills Street. The veterinary clinic's parking lot was full cars Frank recognized from around town. Word had already spread. "Frank," Tom said as he parked, "what if none of this is random? What if—" He stopped mid-sentence. Through the clinic's glass doors, they could see Jake in the waiting room. The boy was still holding the cub, but he was talking to someone in a wheelchair, someone whose face Frank couldn't see, but whose hand rested on a carved wooden cane that Frank recognized immediately. It had been Margaret's. Frank's hand froze on the clinic door handle. The carved wood of Margaret's cane cherry, with the dove she'd carved during her first round of chemo, caught the fluorescent light through the glass. The person holding it sat with their back to the door, shoulders hidden beneath a gray blanket. Tom pushed past him, yanking the door open. The antiseptic smell hit immediately, that sharp chemical tang that brought Frank back to Margaret's last days. Underneath it, the copper scent of blood. Jake looked up from where he sat. The cougar cub pressed against his chest. Its eyes were squeezed shut, body trembling. Jake's shirt showed dark patches where the cub had urinated from fear. "Mr. Morrison," Jake said. "This lady says she knew Mrs. Morrison." The wheelchair turned. The woman's face was younger than Frank expected, maybe 40. Native features, a surgical scar running from her left temple to her jaw. Her hand on Margaret's cane was missing 2 fingers. "Frank Morrison," she said. "Not a question. Who are you?" "Elena Crow Dog, wildlife biologist." She shifted, and Frank saw the paralysis in her legs, the way they didn't track with her upper body movement. "Your wife saved my life 4 years ago?" Tom stepped between them. "Margaret died 3 years ago. The timeline doesn't—" "November 20, Highway 54, mile marker 8. Elena's eyes never left Frank's face. "I'd been tracking F14's mother. A storm came in fast, but my truck rolled. Your wife found me." Frank's knees went weak. He remembered that night, Margaret coming home late, covered in blood, saying she'd helped at an accident. She'd never mentioned the cane, which had been in her car for her bad days. "She gave me this when the EMTs came," Elena continued, lifting the cane. "Said I'd need it more than her. Said someday I'd have a chance to pay it forward." A door slammed open down the hall. Mills emerged, surgical mask pulled down, blood on his scrubs. His face gave nothing away. "She's alive," he said. "Barely." Sarah appeared behind him, pulling off latex gloves. "The leg's gone. Had to take it at the shoulder. The internal bleeding's controlled for now, but the pregnancy," Frank said. "The cubs." Mills's expression tightened. "That's the complication. She's in labor." "Labor?" Tom's voice cracked. "Now, trauma-induced. 3 cubs on ultrasound, maybe 4. Too premature. They need another week minimum." Mills looked at Frank. "We can try to stop the labor, but the drugs might kill her in her condition, or we let it progress and lose the cubs." Jake stood, still holding the first cub. "What about a C-section?" "She won't survive another surgery. Not today." Elena wheeled herself forward. "There's a third option." Everyone turned to her. "Let her deliver. I've seen cougars born at 30 days premature survive with support. It's been done. I've done it." She held up her damaged hand. "Lost these fingers to a mother who didn't appreciate my help, but her cubs lived." Mills shook his head. "We don't have the facilities. You have incubators, feeding tubes. The helicopter brought everything needed." Elena looked at Frank. "Your son thought of everything?" Frank's phone vibrated. David's face appeared on the screen, real-time video from somewhere that looked like a private jet interior. "Shit, Dad, I'm 40 minutes out. The conservation team is already there. Trust Elena." "David, how do you know?" "Mom told me about Elena, about the accident. She made me find her 6 months ago." David's controlled mask slipped. "Mom knew something was coming. I don't know how, but she knew." A scream echoed from the surgery suite. Not human, the primal sound of an animal in agony. Mills ran back toward the OR. "She's pushing. Decision time." Frank looked at Tom, at Jake with his scarred neck, at Elena in her wheelchair with Margaret's cane. "Save them," Frank said. "Save them all." Mills disappeared through the doors. Sarah followed. Elena wheeled herself after them, surprisingly fast. "I'm going in," she called back. "Jake, bring the cub. She needs to smell her baby." Jake looked at his grandfather. Tom's jaw worked like he was chewing glass. Then he nodded. The OR was controlled chaos. The mother cougar lay on her left side, the stump of her right leg wrapped in white bandages, already showing red seepage. Her breathing came in rapid pants. A contraction rippled across her exposed belly. "First cub," Sarah announced. Frank watched Mills work, his hands impossibly gentle as he guided the tiny form out, no bigger than a smartphone, slick with birth fluids, eyes sealed shut. It didn't move. Elena was already there with a heating pad and suction bulb. "Give it to me." She worked the cub's airway clear. Her 3-fingered hand, steady, rubbed its chest with a towel. Nothing. She leaned down and breathed into its tiny nostrils once, twice. The cub gasped, a sound smaller than a whisper, but alive. "Incubator," Elena ordered. Jake appeared with a plastic box lined with heating elements. Originally meant for premature puppies at the clinic, the second cub came faster. This one moved on its own, weak mewling sounds that made the mother's ear twitch despite the anesthesia. "She's waking up," the tech monitoring vitals said. "Heart rate spiking. Keep her under," Mills said. But Sarah was already adjusting the IV. "Wait." Elena grabbed the first cub from the incubator. "Let her smell them." She held the tiny creature near the mother's nose. The big cat's nostrils flared. Her heart rate stabilized. The third cub emerged. Breech, hind legs first. Mills cursed. Frank had never heard him curse before. The cub was larger than the others and stuck. "Pelvis is too narrow," Mills said. "If I pull harder, you'll kill them both." Elena finished. She looked at Frank. "There's a technique, but I need steady hands." She held up her damaged hand. 3 fingers weren't enough for what she was describing. Frank stepped forward. "Tell me what to do." "You can't," Mills started. His hands shake. Tom said, "Parkinson's." Frank's tremor had gotten worse through the afternoon. He could feel it in his shoulders, his wrists, the constant vibration under his skin. "I'll do it," Jake said. Everyone froze. "No, Tom said. "Absolutely not. I'm the only one with small enough hands and no tremor." Jake set down the first cub he'd been holding. It immediately started crying, the sound spurring its mother to another contraction. "Tell me what to do." Elena looked at Mills. Mills looked at Tom. Tom's face had gone gray, but he nodded. "Gloves," Elena said. "Jake, you need to reach in. Find the cub's front legs. They're folded back. Straighten them out, gentle as you can." Sarah helped Jake with the surgical gloves. They went halfway up his forearms. The boy's face had gone pale, but his hands were steady. "Can she feel this?" Jake asked. "No," Mills said. "She's deep under." Jake reached in. His face contorted concentration, not disgust. Frank watched the boy's scarred neck tense as he worked but feel alone. "Got one leg," Jake said. "It's so small, like a bird bone." "Careful," Elena coached. "Don't pull, just guide." The mother cougar's body convulsed with another contraction. Jake bit his lip hard enough to draw blood, but didn't pull his hand back. "Second leg," he said. "Positioned." "Now step back," Mills said. "Let her push it out." The third cub emerged in a rush of fluid, larger than the others, but limp, blue-tinged under the thin coat of fur. Mills grabbed it, already working. Suction. Chest compressions with 2 fingers. "Nothing. Too long without oxygen," he said. "No." Jake took the cub from Mills's hands. "No, you're wrong." The boy held the cub against his chest, right over his heart. Started humming some tune Frank didn't recognize. His hands cupped around the tiny body. "Sharing warmth. Jake," Tom said gently. "Sometimes—" The cub sneezed. A tiny explosion of fluid, then a gasp, then a cry louder than its siblings, angry at the world. Jake's tears came then, silent, dropping onto the cub's fur. "There's another one," Mills said suddenly. "I can feel another one." The fourth cub was the smallest, barely formed. It came quickly, already moving, already fighting. "4 cubs," Elena said. What you beautiful girl, 4 cubs." They worked in assembly line, Mills delivering, Elena and Sarah cleaning airways, Jake placing them in incubators, Frank adjusting heating pads with his shaking hands. Tom stood guard over the mother, watching her vitals like they might attack. The mother, Cougar's eye opened, just one, the other still closed from anesthesia. But that single golden eye tracked movement found her cubs in their plastic boxes. "She's coming around too fast," Mills said. "Sarah, increase the—" The mother's eye found Jake, locked onto him. The boy still had the largest cub against his chest, skin-to-fur contact, providing warmth the incubators couldn't match. "It's okay," Jake whispered to her. "They're all alive, all 4. The mother blinked, slow, deliberate, her eye closed. "Vitals dropping," the tech called. "She's crashing." Mills moved fast, hands checking the surgery site. "She's bleeding internally. The uterus." He looked up. "I need to go back in. She won't survive another surgery," Sarah said. "She won't survive without it." Elena wheeled herself to the mother's head, placed her damaged hand on the cougar's skull, between the ears. "F-14, she said. "Your mother was F-7. I watched her raise you and your brother in the Cimarron grasslands. She survived a forest fire, 2 territory fights, and a snake bite that should have killed her." Elena leaned close to the cougar's ear. "You have her blood. Don't you dare die now." The mother's breathing stuttered, stopped. "No pulse," the tech said. Mills started compressions. Sarah prepared epinephrine. Tom grabbed defibrillator paddles from the wall. Frank's phone rang. David's ringtone. "Dad." David's voice came through the speaker. "The security footage. You need to see it now." "David, she's dying." "I know. That's why you need to see it. Now." A video file appeared on Frank's screen. Security camera footage from his ranch. Timestamp September 25th, 2:00 a.m., 3 nights ago. The infrared image showed his front porch. A figure walked into frame, human, but moving strangely. It came closer to the camera, and Frank's blood went cold. It looked like Margaret. Same height, same build, same way of favoring her left hip, but the face was hidden in shadow. The figure pointed toward the railroad tracks, then placed something on the porch. The video ended. "I checked the porch that morning," David's voice said. "Found this." Another image appeared, a cougar track pressed into clay, fired like pottery. And below it, carved in Margaret's handwriting, "Choose love." The mother cougar's heart started beating. The monitor's rhythm changed from steady to erratic. Frank had been listening to it for 3 hours, long enough that the sound had become part of his breathing. Now, the irregular beep-beep skip made him jolt upright in the plastic chair. 3:47 a.m. The clinic's overhead lights had been dimmed to emergency levels. Jake lay curled on a pile of blankets near the incubators, one hand reaching through the plastic to touch the smallest cub. Tom stood at the window, his reflection ghost-like in the dark glass. The mother cougar lay on her side. The stump where her right leg had been seeping through fresh bandages. The white gauze had gone pink, then red, now brown with old blood. Her breathing came shallow. 28 breaths per minute, when it should be 12. Temperature's rising. Sarah checked the digital readout. 103.8. The antibiotics aren't working. Sid Mills had gone home at midnight, on call but exhausted. Elena dozed in her wheelchair, Margaret's cane across her lap. They'd moved the surgery into recovery, but recovery was becoming something else. Frank stood, his knees popping like firecrackers. The tremor in his hands had worsened exhaustion, amplifying the Parkinson's. He gripped the rail of the cougar's gurney to hide it. What kind of infection? Could be anything. The trap was rusted, full of bacteria, plus the internal injuries, the emergency surgery. Sarah drew blood from the IV port, the dark red filling vial after vial. "I'll run another culture." "But it takes time we don't have." The mother's eye opened the same golden eye that had found Jake earlier, but now it was dull, the third eyelid partially covering it. She tried to lift her head, managed an inch before collapsing. The cubs made noise from their incubators, not the healthy mewing from before, but distressed chirps. They knew. "Her milk came in," Sarah said, checking beneath the surgical drape. "But she can't nurse them, not like this." Tom turned from the window. "Formula? We're using kitten replacement, but newborn cougars need colostrum antibodies from mother's milk. Without it—" Sarah didn't finish. Jake stirred on his makeshift bed, not waking, but his hand tightened on the cub. The boy had refused to leave, even when Tom ordered him home. The scars on his neck looked silver in the low light. The heart monitor skipped again, then again. "Vitak," Sarah said, already moving. "She's going into ventricular tachycardia." The rhythm on the monitor turned chaotic spikes and valleys with no pattern. The mother's body went rigid, muscles contracting. "Jake, get back," Tom ordered. But the boy was already scrambling away. Sarah grabbed the crash cart, hands flying over drawers. "Lidocaine, 100 milligrams. She drew the drug, injected it into the IV port. "Come on, girl. Come back to normal rhythm." The monitor's chaos continued. The mother's lips pulled back from her teeth. Foam tinged pink at the corners. "Not working?" Sarah prepared another syringe. "Amiodarone, 300 milligrams. Frank watched the numbers on the monitor dropping. Heart rate 180, 200, 220. Too fast for the heart to actually pump blood. "She's not perfusing," Sarah said. "Frank, chest compressions. Now." Frank climbed onto the gurney, positioning his hands over the cougar's chest. The fur was damp with sweat, hot with fever. He pressed down, felt ribs flex under his palms. The tremor in his hands didn't matter now. Compressions were about rhythm, not precision. 1, 2, 3, he counted. Sweat ran into his eyes. His lower back screamed. The monitor went flat. "Asystole," Sarah said. "No electrical activity?" She grabbed the epinephrine, a larger dose this time. "Tom, take over compressions." Tom climbed up as Frank climbed down. The rancher's compressions were harder, more forceful. The cougar's body rocked with each push. "How long?" Elena asked. She'd woken, wheeling herself closer. 4 minutes since the arrest, Sarah said. Brain death at 6 minutes. Frank knew the math. Jake stood by the incubators, tears running down his face. "Is she dying?" No one answered. 5 minutes. Sarah pushed another round of epinephrine, then atropine. The monitor stayed flat. Tom's compressions never stopped, but Frank saw his shoulders shaking, saw the wetness on the rancher's weathered cheeks. "Come on," Tom whispered. "Your babies need you." His voice cracked. "I've been hating your kind for 5 years. 5 years of wanting you all dead. But not you, not now. Your babies need you." 6 minutes. Sarah stopped preparing medications. Her hands fell to her sides. "Tom," she said gently, "it's time." "No." Tom's compressions continued. "Not yet." 7 minutes. Elena wheeled to the incubators, lifted the smallest cub, the fourth one, the fighter. It mewed weakly, eyes still sealed shut. "Bring it to her," Elena said. "She's gone," Sarah said. "Bring it anyway." Jake took the cub from Elena, his hands infinitely gentle. He carried it to the gurney, held it against its mother's face. The cub made that chirping sound, the one that had started everything at the railroad tracks, high and desperate and pure need. Tom stopped compressions. Everyone stood still. The monitor stayed flat. Jake placed the cub on its mother's neck, where her pulse should be. The tiny creature nuzzled into her fur, chirping continuously. 10 seconds, 20, 30, a blip on the monitor. "Artifact," Sarah said. "Sometimes the machine," another blip, then a rhythm. Slow, weak, but real. "That's impossible," Sarah whispered. 7 minutes without. The mother's eye opened, found her cub, her tongue dry and pale. Touched the baby once. "Get her on dopamine," Sarah ordered, professionalism overriding shock. "And no repinephrine. We need to maintain blood pressure." Turned to Climate, cat down from the gurney, legs barely holding him. Frank had never seen him cry before, not when his son died in Afghanistan, not when Jake was attacked. But now Tom Bradley wept openly, no sound, just water running down carved lines in his face. "She's not out of danger," Sarah said, adjusting IV drips. "The infection's still spreading, and even if she survives..." She looked at the bandaged stump. 3 legs. She can't hunt, can't climb properly, can't defend territory. The mother's eye tracked to each person in the room, stopped on Jake. "She knows," Jake said. "She knows she can't go back to the wild." Frank's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number different from before. "F-14 has a sister. Collared yesterday near Cimarron grassland. Same father, different mother." A photo appeared. Another female cougar, nearly identical to the one on the gurney. Another text, "F-13 killed 2 calves at Bradley Ranch Thursday night. DNA confirmed. Tom Bradley shot the wrong cat." Frank looked at Tom, still wiping his eyes, the rancher who'd aimed his rifle at an innocent mother. "Tom," Frank said, "you need to see this." But before he could show the phone, the clinic's front door chimed. Someone had entered despite the locked door. Footsteps in the hallway, slow, measured, the tap of wood on linoleum. Elena's hands tightened on Margaret's cane. "Someone's using a walking stick." The footsteps stopped outside recovery. The door handle turned. A man entered, tall, native features like Elena, but older. His left arm hung useless at his side, and he leaned heavily on an aluminum crutch. "Hello, Elena," he said. "I've come for my cougar." Elena's wheelchair jerked backward, the rubber tires squealing against linoleum. Her knuckles went white around the wheels. "Joseph," she said, "you're supposed to be in federal custody." The man's crutch tapped closer. Under the fluorescent lights, Frank could see the full extent of his injuries, burned scars covering the right side of his face, the dead arm strapped to his torso, the way his right leg dragged slightly. "Early release," Joseph said. "Compassionate grounds." He smiled, showing missing teeth. "Turns out, helping the government track wildlife poachers for 3 years counts as community service." Tom stepped between Joseph and the gurney. "Nobody's taking this cougar anywhere. Legally. She's property of the Federal Wildlife Conservation Program." Joseph pulled a folded document from his jacket. "F-14, tagged and released under my supervision 18 months ago. Before my incident," Sarah continued adjusting the IV drips, but Frank saw her hand move toward the panic button under the med card. "Your incident," Elena said, "was trying to sell cougar cubs to a private zoo in Texas." "Allegedly." Joseph's good eye, the left one. The right was milky white, fixed on the incubators. 4 cubs, worth $40,000 each on the black market, more if they're hand-raised." Jake moved to block the incubators, the boy's thin frame laughably inadequate against Joseph's bulk. "Over my dead body," Jake said. Joseph laughed. Phlegm rattled in his chest. "Brave old boy. Scars on your neck say you've met a cougar before." He leaned on his crutch. "Let me guess. You all think you saved her, think you're heroes." "We did save her," Frank said. "From the railroad tracks where she was trapped." "Trapped?" Joseph's damaged mouth twisted. "You know why F-14 was near those tracks she was running? From effort and territory dispute." He tapped his temple with one finger. "I may be half blind and crippled, but I still monitor the GPS collars. F-13 pushed her out of the grasslands 3 days ago." Frank's phone vibrated. He glanced at it, David calling. He declined. "F-13, Tom said slowly. "That's the one that killed my calves." Joseph nodded. "Thursday night, 11:47 p.m. and 12:10 a.m. 2 Angus calves, approximately 400 pounds each. F-13's collar puts her at your ranch." Tom's rifle was in his truck. Frank could see him calculating the distance. "Where's F-13 now, Pieta?" Tom asked. 12 miles southwest, heading toward the Hendricks place." Joseph shifted his weight, grimacing. "She'll kill again tonight, unless what? Unless you let me take F-4 and her cubs. I'll call in F-13's location to Wildlife Services. They'll tranquilize and relocate her." Joseph's good eye gleamed. "Or Tom here can go shoot her. Either way, problem solved." Elena's wheelchair rolled forward. "You're lying. You don't have authority anymore. You're a convicted felon." "Convicted of misdemeanor trafficking attempt. Served my time." Joseph pulled another paper from his jacket. "Reinstated as wildlife consultant, limited capacity. Judge Hendricks signed it yesterday." "Judge Hendricks," Sarah said, "whose ranch is about to be attacked." Joseph smiled wider. The mother cougar's eye opened. She'd been conscious, listening. Her tail twitched just the tip. But Tom noticed. "She understands," Tom said. "Somehow she knows we're talking about her." "Anthropomorphizing," Joseph said. "Dangerous thinking. She's an animal. Property. Worth approximately $12,000 in conservation funding. Or $60,000 in parts if she dies." He looked at the bandaged stump. "Though 3-legged, she's worth less. Maybe $8,000 to a roadside zoo." Jake made a sound like he'd been punched. His hand went to his scars. Frank's phone lit up with texts from David. "Do not trust Joseph Crow. Dog he's not fed. authorized, "Stall him." 20 minutes out, Joseph noticed Frank reading, "Your son won't make it in time. F-13 is moving fast. She'll hit Hendrix's cattle within the hour." "Bullshit," Tom said. "You can't track F-13 if your federal access was revoked." Joseph held up a different phone, older, scratched screen. "Amazing what you can buy on the dark web. Cloned collar frequencies. I've been tracking every reintroduced cougar for 6 months." "That's illegal," Sarah said. "Prove it." So Joseph tapped his crutch against the floor. "Here's what happens now. You sign F-14 over to me. I take her and the cubs. Everyone lives, including Hendrix cattle. Or," Frank asked, "or I make one phone call. Media arrives. Story breaks. Rancher who shot at wrong cougar performs illegal surgery at unqualified clinic. Mills loses his license. Clinic closes." Joseph's scarred face twisted. "Oh, and the boy who helped Jake Bradley violated about 6 health codes to his mother, Sarah, supervising, loses her nursing license." Sarah's hand had found the panic button, but hadn't pressed it. The threat was too real. "You recorded it," Elena said. "You watched the whole thing." Joseph tapped his dead eye. "Camera implants, sure. Experimental. VA's way of saying sorry for what happened in Afghanistan." He looked at Tom. "Yes, I served too. Lost my eye in Kandahar. Came home to find my reservation had sold our land to developers. Started the conservation program to save something." His voice went bitter, then budget cuts, then desperation, then prison. The mother cougar tried to lift her head. Failed. The smallest cub, still on her neck, chirped. "F-14 knows me," Joseph said. "I bottle-fed her when her mother died. She trusts me." He whistled 3 short notes. The mother cougar's ear twitched toward him. Her eye dilated. "See." Joseph stepped closer. "She remembers." Tom's hand went to his belt. No gun, but a folding knife. "You're not taking her." "Tom Bradley, the man whose grandson was mauled." Joseph's crutch tapped closer. "You know what's interesting? The cougar that attacked your boy M9 had unusual scars on his hip, like he'd been in a trap, a illegal trap, maybe set by someone who hated predators." Tom went still. "Yeah," Joseph continued. "I investigated after the attack. Found your old trap sites. M9 had been caught in one years before. The injury made him desperate, willing to hunt closer to humans. Your trap created the cougar that hurt your grandson." Tom's face drained of color. The knife fell from his hand, clattering on linoleum. Jake looked at his grandfather. "Grandpa, is that true?" Tom couldn't speak. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. Nothing came out. "Everything's connected, Joseph said. Your hate, Jake's scars, F-14 that railroad trap, hurry, even your wife, Frank." Frank's tremor stopped. Complete stillness. "What about Margaret? She funded the initial reintroduction program. Anonymous donation. $200,000. Did you know that?" The room tilted. Frank grabbed the gurney rail. "She believed the land needed predators to be whole." Joseph continued, said she had a dream about cougars returning. Said her husband would understand someday. Elena wheeled forward. "How could you know that you were in prison when she died?" "Because she visited me twice. Wanted to know about the program, about the cats." Joseph's good eye found Frank. She asked specifically about F-14 by name. Said F-14 would matter someday. Frank's phone buzzed. Security footage from David. The timestamp showed 4 nights ago, not 3. The figure on his porch wasn't human. It was F-Reed standing on 3 legs, the 4th mangled and dragging. Somehow she'd escaped the trap once,
made it to his ranch, then returned to the rails where she was trapped again. She'd chosen to come to him before he even knew she existed. She came to you for help, Joseph said, seeing Frank scream. And you know why? Because she could smell Margaret on your land.
The same woman who bottle-fed her as a cub when I was in lockup, Margaret volunteered at the Wildlife Center. F4 imprinted on her. The mother cougar's eye fixed on Frank, recognition there, or imagination. So here's the real question. Joseph said, do you honor your dead wife's work by giving F-14 to someone who knows how to care for her? Or do you let amateurs play zoo and watch her die of infection in this inadequate clinic? The monitor's rhythm stuttered again. Sarah checked the temperature 142. She's getting worse, Sarah said quietly. The antibiotics aren't working. Joseph reached into his jacket. Instead of another document, he pulled out a vial of clear liquid, experimental antibiotic, developed for exotic animals. Not FDA approved, but effective against resistant infections. He held it up to the light. 1 dose, $40,000 value. I give it to her. She lives. But she comes with me. Frank looked at Tom, broken by the revelation about the trap, at Jake, processing his grandfather's role in his attack, at the dying cougar who'd somehow chosen him for help. You have 60 seconds to decide, Joseph said. After that, F-13 reaches Hendrix's ranch, and the real killing starts. The smallest cub chirped again, the sound weaker than before. Its mother's eye began to close. Sarah touched Frank's arm. She's going into shock again. We need to decide now. Joseph held out the vial. What's it going to be? Morrison. Frank took the vial from Joseph's hand. The glass was cold, the liquid inside clear as water. He held it up to the light, watching for sediment, contamination, anything that might tell him if this was salvation or snake oil. Frank, Sarah warned. Unknown drug, no documentation. It's real. Elena's voice cut through. I recognize the batch number, his KX-401. We used it on mountain lions in Colorado, saved 3 cats with resistant infections. Joseph's scarred face showed surprise. You remember. I remember everything from before you destroyed our program. Frank uncapped the vial. The chemical smell hit immediately sharp, metallic, wrong somehow. His hands shook as he drew it into a syringe. Wait! Tom's voice came out strangled. He pulled out his phone, fingers clumsy on the screen. Sheriff Daniels. Tom Bradley, got a situation at Mills's clinic. Need you here now. He listened. Then, no, not that kind of emergency. Wildlife issue. Federal fraud, maybe. Joseph's good eye narrowed. You're making a mistake. No, Tom said. I've made enough mistakes. Set those traps 8 years ago. Created the monster that hurt my grandson. His voice cracked. Not making another one. Jake moved to his grandfather's side. The boy's hand found Tom's. Squeezed once. Frank pushed the plunger. The experimental antibiotic entered F-Fortis' IV line, mixing with saline, flowing into her bloodstream. 20 minutes, Joseph said. That's how long it takes to work. If it works, he adjusted his crutch. You just stole $40,000 of proprietary medication. Sue me. Frank watched the monitor, heart rate still elevated, Sata temperature still climbing. David's voice came through the phone speaker. Dad, I'm pulling into the parking lot. I have someone with me. The clinic door chimed, footsteps multiple sets. David appeared first, still in his Manhattan suit, despite the rural Kansas setting. Behind him, a woman Frank didn't recognize. 50s, native features, wearing Fish and Wildlife Service uniform. Director Chen? Elena breathed. Joseph? Director Chen's voice carried exhausted authority. You're in violation of your parole, again. I'm consulting You're stalking GPS-collared animals with cloned frequencies. She held up a tablet showing tracking data. We've been monitoring your equipment for 3 months. Joseph's damaged face went slack. You knew. We knew. Chen stepped closer. We also know you've been in contact with the Texas buyers, recording everything, building a case. The mother cougar made a sound not quite a growl, more like a sigh. Her eye opened wider, pupil contracting. The smallest cub on her neck chirped, and she responded with a soft rumble. Temperature dropping, Sarah announced. 103.2, 103.1. The antibiotic was working. Joseph laughed, bitter and broken. So I'm going back to prison. Yes. Chen's expression softened slightly. But F-14 lives. Your medication, even stolen, saved her. That counts for something. Sheriff Daniels arrived, took Joseph into custody. The man went without resistance, his crutch tapping a funeral rhythm on the linoleum. At the door, he turned. F-13 really is heading for Hendricks Ranch, but that wasn't a lie. Chen checked her tablet. Response team is already en route. Tranquilizer capture, relocation to Oklahoma territory. She looked at Tom. No killing. These animals are federally protected. Tom nodded, his hand still holding Jake's. Oh, what about F-14? Frank asked. She can't survive in the wild with 3 legs. Chen studied the cougar, the cubs in their incubators, the people gathered around them. The Morrison Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. David filed all the paperwork. Federal approval came through an hour ago. Frank looked at his son. David's controlled expression had finally cracked, showing the exhaustion underneath. Mom would have wanted this, David said. She knew something was coming. Left letters, instructions, even picked out names for buildings. He pulled out a folder. The veterinary clinic will be called the Tom Bradley Center for Wildlife Medicine. Tom's legs gave out. He sat hard on the floor, Jake dropping beside him. Why? Tom asked. After everything I've done, because? David read from Margaret's letter. Redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about choosing differently, going forward. F-14's temperature hit normal. Her breathing deepened. When Jake brought all 4 cubs to her, the medical team improvising a way for her to nurse, despite the amputation, she cleaned each one with careful attention. Dawn came through the windows. Frank stood watching the sunrise paint the Kansas plains gold, his tremor finally quiet. Tom and Jake had fallen asleep in their chairs, the boy's head on his grandfather's shoulder. Sarah and Elena discussed treatment plans with Chen and David. The mother cougar's eye found Frank's. She blinked once, slow and deliberate, the feline expression of trust. Frank thought of Margaret, of her secret donations in Wildlife Center volunteering, of her dreams about cougars returning to the land, of her faith that broken things could heal if given the chance. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number different from all the others. It was a photo. Margaret, taken 2 weeks before she died, holding a cougar cub. The angle suggested she'd taken it herself. A selfie before her hands got too weak. The cub in the photo had distinctive markings on its ear, the same markings as F-Wart. Below the photo, text in Margaret's saved drafts, scheduled to send 3 years after her death. Frank, if you're reading this, you made the right choice. Love always finds a way home. Even if it has 3 legs and 4 cubs, take care of our girl. M. The smallest cub made that chirping sound again, not distressed this time, content, outsit. The Kansas sun rose full, painting everything gold after it had been captured safely. Hendricks's cattle grazed undisturbed. The Morrison Wildlife Rehabilitation Center would break ground in 2 weeks. F4, who Jake would later name Hope, lifted her head for the first time since surgery. Her remaining legs trembled with effort, but she managed to touch her nose to each cub. Then she looked at Frank and made a sound he'd never heard from a cougar before. It sounded almost like a purr. 6 months have passed since that September afternoon. I'm sitting on my porch watching Hope teach her cubs to stalk grasshoppers in the sanctuary enclosure. Tom stops by most mornings now, brings coffee, does not talk much. Jake volunteers after school, cleaning enclosures, preparing meals. Yesterday he asked if I thought the scars ever really go away. I told him the truth. They don't, but they become something else. Maps, maybe, showing where we've been, pointing where we might go. David calls weekly from New York. He's funding 2 more sanctuaries. Says Margaret left him instructions, dreams written in hospital notebooks during her last days. Sometimes I wonder if she knew, if somehow she saw all this coming. Then Hope looks at me through the fence with those golden eyes, and I stop wondering. This story was inspired by documented wildlife rescue events created solely for entertainment purposes. This narrative does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence, harmful behavior, or illegal wildlife handling. All characters, including Frank Morrison, Tom Bradley, and others, are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real persons, living or deceased, or actual events is purely coincidental. Wildlife encounters should always be handled by trained professionals. The medical procedures described are fictional and should not be attempted.